Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. In recent weeks, we've seen growing attention on hiring in healthcare and in schools. Oregon's private healthcare and social assistance sector lost 100 jobs in October, and it's grown much more slowly over the past year than Oregon's economy on the whole. And different parts of the healthcare sector are seeing different trends. Ambulatory healthcare services, which is doctors' offices, other specialist offices, they've added 2,900 jobs over the past year. At the same time, hospitals in Oregon lost 1,000 jobs. And Oregon's nursing and residential care facilities have 4,600 fewer jobs than they did in October 2020. And these job growth differences within healthcare are happening nationwide too. Nationally, healthcare grew by 0.8% over the past year. So again, much slower than overall job growth. And nationally, we saw that ambulatory and healthcare services, those doctors and specialist offices, they added more than 261,000 jobs over the past 12 months. Now, hospitals did add jobs nationwide, about 22,000. That's a growth rate of 0.4%. And across the country, nursing and residential care facilities lost more than 157,000 jobs over the past year. And since September of 2019, they've lost a total of 409,000 jobs. Now, turning to schools. Oregon's public education, everything from K-12 through public colleges and universities, they make up about half of all payroll jobs in local government. Overall, Oregon's local government employment was about 13,600 jobs, or 5.9%, lower in October 2021 than it was before the recession in February 2020. By comparison, non-farm employment is still down by about 3.7%. So local government appears to be struggling a bit more than the overall economy to add back all the jobs that were lost in 2020. Now, hiring in local government did ramp up for the return of fully in-person instruction this fall. Yet, in Oregon and across the US, public K-12 and public higher education, they hired far less than expected as the school year got underway. In Oregon, local government fell short of seasonal hiring levels by 2,600 jobs in September and by 5,400 jobs in October. Education was the primary reason for the shortfalls. And again, what's happening here is consistent with what's happening across the US. Nationally, public K-12 and public higher education fell 101,000 jobs short of typical hiring levels in September and 65,000 short in October. With that, I'll turn it over to Acting Director David Gerstenfeld for more updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us. Pleased to be here to answer your questions today, but first I had just a few brief statements. Wanted to remind everyone that people who have questions about the many federal and state programs we implemented this past year, or any other questions about their benefits, still have the Contact Us form they can use at unemployment.oregon.gov/contact us. We previously committed to answering at least 90% of calls in under 5 minutes by December 1st. Since the middle of November, we've surpassed that goal and we're responding to 96% of calls in under 5 minutes. Last week, the Employment Department paid more than $14 million in benefits to more than 24,000 people. I want to turn to the federal government, where there are two important dates coming up that we want to make sure people are aware of. The first is that the Employment Department receives some of its funding from the U.S. Department of Labor, and we're currently operating under a federal continuing resolution that goes through midnight on this Friday, December 3rd. Second, it's projected that the federal debt limit will be reached by Wednesday, December 15th. That means the federal government may not be able to meet its obligations to pay federal funds to the Employment Department after that date. We want to make sure that Oregonians know that even with a federal shutdown, we will pay unemployment insurance benefits on time. Although Employment Department operations could be impacted in the future due to a federal shutdown, we have been through federal shutdowns before and we're prepared in case of a shutdown later this year. Oregon is fortunate to have sufficient non-federal funds that will allow us to continue operations for at least a month while waiting for a federal government agreement on the continuing federal budget. The Employment Department continues to closely watch for any congressional action before midnight on December 3rd that will help us continue operations with federal funds. But again, I want to stress that even if there is a federal shutdown later this week, we will continue paying unemployment insurance benefits on time. As Oregon continues experiencing near record low unemployment, the Oregon Employment Department and its WorkSource Oregon partners remain committed to helping all workers find good jobs and to helping employers find talented employees. Here are a few of the upcoming job fairs and employer meet and greets that are organized with WorkSource Oregon centers. Let LinkedIn Go to Work for You has its next free workshop from 9 to 10 a.m. tomorrow, December 2nd. A Veterans Job Fair is scheduled for Saturday, December 4th in White City, Oregon. A Ready 22 Reverse Job Fair is scheduled for 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Tuesday, December 7th in Redmond, and again Wednesday, December 8th in Bend. Participants at these events can meet business representatives and hand out their resumes. An Intel virtual hiring event is scheduled for 9 a.m. to noon on Thursday, December 8th. Meet the Employer events are scheduled in Salem on Wednesday, December 8th and the following day. A job fair with interviews conducted on site is scheduled for 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturday, December 11th at the Portland VA Medical Center. And finally, we're partnering with Google on a free scholarship program that can help people find higher paying jobs. This Grow with Google training program is open to unemployed and employed people and is geared towards those with little or no IT experience who are looking to enter the technology field. The deadline to apply for this program is December 31st, and people can learn more about this by contacting their local WorkSource Center. I'm pleased that the National Association of State Workforce Agencies has recognized Oregon for our success in already signing up nearly 100 Oregonians for this program. And with that, we're ready to take any questions that you may have. And I think Rebecca will likely be.
That's me. Okay. Sorry about that. So we're going to open the lines to members of the media to ask questions now, and we will call on you in the order you RSVP'd. Again, please make sure you state to whom you're directing your question, either David or Gail. And then remember that to hit *6 to unmute yourself. And if you don't get your questions answered today, you can always email us at oed_communications@employ.oregon.gov. So first up is Peter Wong with Pamplin Media.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
You're a little faint. If you could turn yourself up a bit, Peter, that'd be great.
I will try. I know I can't have problems. Okay. Better, worse? Not.
A little better. We can hear you well enough.
Okay. I'll get right close here. I don't have anything for David, but for Gail, are there any explanations for the decline in healthcare? I can kind of see the nurses because we had enough stories about burnout and other reasons for that in hospitals having to, because of COVID, having to put off other kinds of things that they normally do. But are there any other and for the schools, of course, the questions, the continuing questions about the pandemic and in-person learning. But I'm more interested in the healthcare as to whether there are some explanations for that, either nationally or statewide.
It's a great question. And I think each part of healthcare is seeing something a little bit different, just like their trends are different. I think what's happening to each of them is a little bit different. In terms of nursing and residential care facilities, that's the one that's the most striking. The losses are so distinctive, and particularly nationwide, they've been happening for such a long time. I think it's a mix of things that are happening there. Early in the pandemic, those nursing and residential care facilities, they were COVID outbreak spots. And so I think that that's something that could have deterred some workers because before the pandemic, those types of facilities already lost workers generally to hospitals. They'd been telling us that for years. So I think that that could have been something that was happening in early pandemic. And the other thing is that as the pandemic has worn on, there is some choice by some number of families, which I don't have hard data on, that have said, you know what, we're not going to use this nursing and residential care facility or any of them. We're going to find some sort of alternative care arrangement. So I think that's something that's also been driving losses. So a few different things there. And hospitals, there's a lot going on there as well. There is the nature of the work in a COVID environment. You know, it's a high contact. So is residential care too. It's a high contact, in person, more likely to run into COVID environment and acute or severe cases of COVID as well. So I think that's something that's been a factor there too. And we've also seen in recent months, there have been some incredibly lucrative opportunities in terms of signing bonuses and working COVID if being in a high contact in-person situation is less of a concern for somebody. And those could be encouraging worker movement across places as well. In terms of schools, again, I think it's kind of different. If we break it down in more detail, the universities actually have lost very little in the way of their payroll jobs. The community colleges saw the biggest share of declines percentage between spring 2020 and spring 2021. It was about 1 out of 5. But the K-12 schools have the largest number in terms of job declines. But that stuff those detailed records aren't updated through fall yet. But I think that the thing that is most concerning to me for K-12 schools is that they seem to me to be a later chapter in the narrative that we've been having for months about everybody reopening at about the same time, trying to hire thousands of workers to do very similar things at the same time. And the competition for that, the thing that's added on to them is that they're coming into this months later than leisure and hospitality or other places did. And by the time that schools are really looking to ramp up their hiring for this school year, the unemployment rate's already, down below, it's at about 5.5%, and the number of unemployed people's already been cut in half. So they're already starting with a lower available workforce than even those other areas that we saw the competition before.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, up next is Bill Poehler with the Statesman Journal.
Yeah, hi. This question is for David. So wondering if you can tell us the status or what you can tell us about the status of the gender and racial discrimination complaint from September that you've been telling us about.
Sure, and that investigation is still going on, so there's really not much I can say while it's pending. They are continuing to work on that.
Right. Okay.
We did hear those, as I've shared, when we hear more from the results, we will share more. And of course, we're continuing to take a lot of action now, not waiting for that, including getting some outside equity and inclusion experts and a lot of really good work that's going on within the paid family medical leave insurance division to make sure that we're moving forward in the right way, and with other parts of the agency, with everyone really focused on this.
Right. You'd brought up that one in particular, but through a public records request I made, there have been quite a few in that paid family medical leave area. Quite a few complaints made in that area, and the last that I'd gotten, there were still 4 that were investigations still ongoing. So it seems like this is something that's not just that might not be just isolated there. What can you tell us about about the repeated complaints that have been made there?
Well, and I think when I addressed this initially, we shared that whenever we hear concerns like this, we take them very seriously and we address them immediately. We look into them. It's because we had concerns about some related issues. So, for instance, on the information that you received, there may be multiple items listed that may be related to the same or similar incidents. And it's because of that that it made us make sure that we had that extra external look so that we could ensure that when we were looking at things, we weren't missing anything and that we were taking all the action needed. It really is so vital, both internally as a workforce, that we provide that really welcoming and inclusive environment, and that we build the program that way. So we've been addressing issues as they arise and really wanted to go the extra step of having an external third party look at things just to make sure that we're not missing anything.
Okay, and one quick follow up on that. Are these? I mean, there's so many that of the complaints that came in. Was that? Can you tell me about? Are these ones that are still all open? Are they still related? Are they related to themselves? Are they all the same person? What can you tell me about that?
I really can't go into details about pending complaints. But again, once those are resolved and we're able to share a little bit more, we will. We really want to protect the integrity of that investigation, that ensuring equity and inclusion is so important. It just isn't optional here. It's core to everything that we do.
All right, thanks, David.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Mike Rogaway with the Oregonian.
Hey, David. We talked earlier in the fall, or maybe the late summer, about what happens when people lose their jobs for refusing vaccines. Have you seen, now that that's started to happen, have you seen applications from workers in that circumstance? And is there any change in how the department is handling them, or any legal challenges that you're aware of?
So we certainly have seen claims from individuals who either have been who have either quit their jobs because of vaccination requirements or have been discharged for not meeting them. The legal framework hasn't changed. We're required to look at each situation individually, so that there are some general principles that apply. And I've shared those before, that in general, a requirement to have a vaccination against a virus causing a pandemic is reasonable. For people that either quit or are discharged, we frequently end up looking at whether the individual, if they do have, for instance, a medical reason or a sincerely held religious belief that would preclude them from being vaccinated, they can still many times receive benefits if they're unemployed as a result. We look at whether other options were explored with the employer, and in many cases they are. So it really is very individualized. I don't have, in terms of legal challenges, I believe that we do have some people who have been in that circumstance where we've made an initial determination, either that they're not eligible for benefits and that they may be challenging that through an independent hearing in front of an administrative law judge, and also that we may have some circumstances where we have allowed benefits and the employer is challenging that decision.
Got it. Thank you. And to go way back in time to the summer and maybe even the spring, what's the adjudication backlog like right now? How quickly are claims that require adjudication being handled these days?
Most of them are being resolved within 21 days. We're still not as timely as we would like to be. There's only a handful of states that have been able to meet the federal kind of benchmark for timeliness, which is resolving 80% of adjudication issues within 21 days. We've been close to achieving that, and we're on our way, but we're not quite to where we want to be. But we're still doing that in the majority of cases, and we're continuing to make progress on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next is Kate Davidson with OPB.
Hi, Gail, a question for you. I was just wondering if you had a sense of how private education has fared sort of versus public education when it comes to staffing shortages. I know that there had been, but is there a disproportionate sort of response there in school systems' abilities to staff up?
It's a good question, Kate, and I haven't looked at it in a couple of months. At last check, private education was struggling as well. I don't know the exact magnitude of it, but I will look it up and get it back to you. They have not recovered as much as the economy overall, similar to local government education, but I'm not sure what the degree is of difference there.